This is all about Bitcoin, and this is a very special day. It's our 100th episode. Since launching in February, we've been talking about all things questions and markets related to Bitcoin for 100 days, and it's been a wild ride. Bitcoin has seen all-time highs of $64,000 and dropped more than half that in a matter of months. The network has seen record hash rates, and the current crackdown on miners in China is sending data centers migrating to other jurisdictions. And it's been a pleasure being your host through the journey. All Bitcoin, all the time. I'm Christine Lee. Let's get the 100th show started, taking a look at our top stories. All right, Andreessen Horowitz, or A16Z, raising over $2 billion for its crypto fund 3, the industry's largest crypto-related fund to date. The venture fund also announcing today it's bringing on former Securities and Exchange Commission official Bill Hinman as an advisory partner. In other money moves, the Novogratz-backed Cryptology Asset Group invested an additional $49 million in Block 1. Meanwhile, Eric Adams, frontrunner in the New York City mayoral race, wants to follow Miami in making the Big Apple the center of Bitcoins. Adams holds a lead of 75,000 votes ahead of his closest rival and tops the list in every borough across the city with the exception of Manhattan. Finally, U.S. crypto exchange COINBASE is entering the Japanese market. Filings with the country's financial watchdog show. This comes at a time when competition is rising. Bloomberg reporting Wednesday that Peter Thiel-backed crypto exchange Bullish plans to go public via SPAC merger with fintech-focused acquisition company Far Peak Acquisition Corp. And lastly, derivatives giant FTX is following Binance's lead in offering tokenized stocks. So checking in on Bitcoin right now for a live look, the CoinDesk Bitcoin price, XPX index is currently trading at just under $35,000. Bitcoin is up about 4.5% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data. The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app. While some observers say the price of Bitcoin has bottomed out, analysts at JPMORGAN remain bearish, identifying the impending unlocking of shares in the Grayscale Bitcoin Trust purchased in January as a source of downside risk to the cryptocurrency. JPMORGAN strategist Nicolaus Prendergast writing, selling of GBTC shares exiting the 6-month lockup period during June and July has emerged as an additional headwind for Bitcoin. After unlocking, investors had the option of liquidating their shareholdings in the secondary market. Analysts at JPMorgan foresee investors selling at least some of their shares, leading to downward pressure on GBTC prices and on Bitcoin markets more generally. Until February, the shares consistently traded at a premium, you see, and that kept overall demand strong, with investors rotating money back into the trust after lockings. Now, however, the incentive to reinvest is relatively low. The so-called Grayscale carry trade has lost its shine ever since GBTC began trading at a discount in February. And joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Director of Indexes and Data, Galen Moore in Boston. Welcome to the show, Galen.
Thanks, Christine. Glad to be here.
Good to have you. All right, so GBTC trading at a discount. Are institutional investors getting cold feet? Isn't this the time to buy?
You know, I think the discount in GBTC continues. It's below the double digits where it's been, or I should say above the double digits rather. Single-digit discount on GBTC below NAV. And I think that simply gives people an option for a place to buy Bitcoin that maybe takes some buyers out of the spot market, right? If you can sort of buy at a discount in the form of GBTC, you may not be as motivated to enter the spot market, which would have an effect on the Bitcoin price. So it really takes some positive pressure away from the Bitcoin price, at least for the near term, as those lockups expire.
Yeah, and just to remind viewers that Grayscale is a sister company to CoinDesk. But we see Andreessen Horowitz, or A16Z, raising over $2 billion for its crypto fund. Does that seem a little positive news? Is that, tailwinds for Bitcoin?
Well, you have A16Z, Citibank. News out today that Citibank is preparing to offer some crypto-related services. So certainly you continue to see these anecdotes of, large pools of capital making long-term bets in Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. But I think there are some short-term headwinds like the GBTC discount. I think another one might be the the glut of mining equipment. Personally, when I go to buy Bitcoin, I don't necessarily go to look to invest in and establish a mining farm, but there are investors who have the scale and the capital to do that. And I think certainly right now, some of them have to be looking at the low capital expense to acquire mining equipment and thinking about that as a way to enter the space. They're certainly aware of the discount that can be there if electricity is cheap enough.
So there is a mining crackdown going on in China. Some miners are going to Kazakhstan. Maryland was another one. Where do you think this migration will take Chinese miners?
I think it seems, from what I've read about it, it seems like the migration may be difficult. Certainly some miners have already looked to sort of geographically diversify. And so those miners will be in a better position than those that are scrambling. But, no doubt there is certainly a fresh supply of used mining equipment that is going to be available in the coming weeks and months. And that, that does have an impact to some degree on the
Could
Bitcoin
be an
price
opportunity.
Certainly, I think there are people who are going to be viewing it that way.
Well, Coinbase is also expanding into Japan. That's another interesting development amid the crackdown going on in China on crypto. What do you make of this move?
Yeah, speaking of regulatory diversification, I think it's very wise for Coinbase or any crypto exchange operating at scale to look to enter other regulatory jurisdictions and markets. I think you mentioned in the news lead-in, Christine, FTX launching new sort of stock market-related synthetics. That's an exciting product innovation, the kind of thing they can't really do in the U.S. I noted the other day that FTX is now going to be appearing on the umpires' uniforms in Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball. Yeah, it reminds me of it reminds me of is Smirnoff Ice. Smirnoff Ice launched as a sort of a co-brand with Smirnoff, and one of the reasons they did that was so they could advertise at ball games. Well, FTX has FTX US. Now, they can't do product innovation and they can't achieve the kind of revenue that they do offshore in FTX US, but it does give them a way to get naming rights and put their logo onto MLB umpire uniforms. Yeah, so it's the Smirnoff Ice of crypto.
We just spoke with SBF earlier this morning. I mean, they've got their names on the Miami Heat arena. It's now the FTX arena. Now, as you mentioned, they're going to be on the umpires and the Major League Baseball. And they're getting more creative with tokenized stocks. Do you think that this is making regulators more nervous, though, that crypto exchanges keep coming out with these really novel financial products, yet getting away with it in Asia?
They have to be, exactly. I mean, regulators have to be watching that. Not only that, but the sort of prediction market type of derivatives that are available on FTX, not allowable for U.S. investors. So it's important for those exchanges to tread carefully. I think that's one of the reasons why they've established U.S. operations so that they can have a legitimate path to reach U.S. users. But the question, I think, ultimately for regulators is going to be to what extent are those exchanges operating within the geographic and jurisdictional constraints that they say they are.
Yep. All right, Galen, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Christine. Always glad to be here.
That was CoinDesk Director of Data and Indexes, Galen Moore in Boston. Coming up, a look at the legacy of antivirus software mogul and crypto enthusiast, John McAfee. Software mogul and crypto evangelist John McAfee was found dead in a prison in Barcelona after the Spanish High Court ruled to extradite him to the United States, where he faced tax evasion charges, in part related to schemes involving cryptocurrencies. McAfee was a larger-than-life figure in the history of computing and crypto, though his legacy also includes failed projects, broken promises, and associations with alleged scams. Joining us now to discuss is CoinDesk Chief Insights Columnist David Morris. Welcome to the show, David.
Hi, glad to be here.
Good to have you. All right, so John McAfee, he's a controversial character. On the one hand, he did do a lot to raise awareness of cryptocurrencies, but on the other hand, it was in a sensationalistic way, and he was involved in alleged pump and dump scams, initial coin offerings as well. What do you think remains of, will his legacy be?
I really think that the best and maybe the most important thing you can say about John McAfee is that he really embodied, at the most extreme or he was the most extreme embodiment of the kind of freedom that cryptocurrency types really praise. And, arguably he maybe took it a little too far, but he was magnetic for that reason. He had a lot of personal draw because he pushed the limits in the way that he did. As you said, unfortunately, that included apparently taking payment to promote coins that were not legitimate projects. I was looking, one of the most notorious ones was Skycoin, which he actually got a tattoo of back in 2018. I was looking, and it's down 98% today from its all-time high. So, as you said, one of the alleged pump and dumps, or at least bad projects. So it's a very complicated picture. I think a lot of people, even if they don't necessarily think of him as a good guy, will be sad to see him go. He was certainly good for copy, and we in the media loved him because he generated so many interesting things happening.
He had some interesting one-liners there, such as I will eat my own genitals if Bitcoin goes to $1 million. Nevertheless, it seems to be a suicide, but there are already conspiracy theories out there that this was an inside job by government officials or otherwise. McAfee even suggested that he could one day disappear because of government officials. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it is important on that front to separate McAfee's kind of self-hype from some genuine complicated situations that he was in. I think a lot of the talk about, being hunted by the IRS or things like that, that was kind of part of his branding. I don't think most of it was intended sincerely. But at the same time, there are at least some credible allegations that he was being targeted by other groups. And I think there will be more about that in coming days and weeks as people go back and kind of look at the history of what happened to McAfee. But perhaps not the U.S., but, he had enemies. He had a lot of enemies. And so we don't, I will agree it's probably too soon to completely close the door on the most extreme possibilities. But at the same time, make sure that you're looking in the right places.
A potential data dump? Who knows? Keep our eyes peeled.
Well, the data is out there. There's a lot of stuff having to do with his involvement in Belize that is, can be read in different ways. I think there at least some people who have looked at it have found it credible that there were threats on his life from, cartels and others for unclear reasons. But, again, a man who led a very complicated life, and his end, I'm sure, was equally complicated.
Well, even his wife has disclosed that she was actually directed to poison him at the beginning of the relationship. She was formerly a prostitute, and eventually disclosed that to McAfee, and I suppose they smooth out the relationship later on. But his role in the crypto community was a bit of an evangelist. He raised awareness about cryptocurrencies, and that has over the years been replaced by other figures such as Michael Saylor right now, to an extent Elon Musk. Do you feel that he has been adequately replaced in the crypto sphere?
Well, yeah, I was actually just talking with one of our editors, Ben, here, and it did seem like he had his moment where he was the right fit. And, I wouldn't say that he has been replaced, but because he always spoke for some of the more extreme fringes of the community. I think what has happened is that those fringes have as a whole been displaced. He came to prominence in 2017, 2018 in crypto when ICOs and, other kind of not always above board things were happening left and right. And obviously there are still problems. This morning we had a gigantic exit scam apparently in a South African exchange. So there's plenty of weird stuff still going on. But generally things have professionalized quite a bit over the last 3 years. And, I think McAfee's place just became smaller relative to the growth of the space as a whole.
Right. And the way he died, apparent suicide. His father committed suicide when he was 15 years old as well. In a way, it doesn't surprise me, but it is sad that he gave up on life because he didn't want to die in a U.S. prison. Concerning. Yeah,
and Edward Snowden actually commented on this on Twitter, I think, this morning, relative to extradition processes and other, particularly political fugitives, which I think is a relevant point when it comes to political stuff. I'm not so sure about. I think extradition, for criminal activity is not something we should throw out with the bathwater. But yeah, I mean, McAfee, it's not surprise. He had some highs and lows in terms of his mental health as well. Many people believed that he had substance abuse problems, and by all accounts, a really smart guy, but somebody with some demons, and so unfortunately, taking his own life, I guess, at least according to the official accounts, was the decision that he made at that point. And I mean, you can imagine somebody like that feeling like they wanted to have control all the way to the end, because that is certainly something that he wanted and valued was his freedom above a lot of other things that other people would place more highly. So in this case, maybe that's just the decision that he made.
And things on his own terms. All right. Thank you so much, David, for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, that was CoinDesk Chief Insights Columnist David Morris. That's it for All About Bitcoin. Thank you for joining me on this 100th episode. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.